Hello, hello. Welcome, hotties. Today we are going to be talking to Adam and Lynn, an incredible couple who I met at the Banff Keeping It Hot couples retreat we had in December 2022, and my friend Danielle Simone Brand to talk about sex and cannabis. So juicy stuff. It's going to be so good. But I have a favor I need to ask you. I need you to help me gain some information. What I've always tried to answer is, what is it that makes marriage so hard, and what can we do to make it better, hotter, more fun? And we've come up with a lot of ideas together for what we can do in the bedroom to make our lives more exciting and how we can have some transference from the bedroom to regular life to just foster communication and cooperation and just good-natured feelings towards your spouse. All right, what I've heard from you, my community, is that these things help for a bit, but then they don't stick. You know, you had the vibrator or the sexy Saturdays or the whatever, but you're falling back into the same patterns. And I think we've actually been asking the wrong question. Rather than asking, what do you want in your marriage? I want you to answer this for me. What do you feel you are giving up by being in your marriage? What incredible feeling or experience or side of yourself would you be fully immersed in if you were not in this marriage right now? Right? Okay, waving a magic wand, you are single and your age and you have a beautiful house. How would your life be better? That's what I want you to answer. And this is counterintuitive because we're trying to figure out a way for your marriage to be better, right? But I think we need to get more honest about what we think we're leaving behind by staying in the marriage, like what we thought we left behind way back when we said, I do, baby, or what we think we are holding ourselves apart from in our everyday that makes us feel like, I am not getting what I want out of this marriage. I am just not. I want you to look at what you think you are missing. And I want you to be honest. So don't go and tell your partner this right away. Like, think about it in your head and write it in your notes app. And if you are willing, please DM me on any social media platform, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Tell me what comes up for you. What do you feel you are missing out on by staying in your marriage? This episode is brought to you by Splash Blanket. Solo pleasure is the ultimate self-care. Strengthening your relationship with your own body and your own sexuality can lead to new heights in partner play. I'll tell you more later in the episode. Grab your 100% waterproof, luxurious sex blanket at splashblanket.us and use code KEEPINGITHOT for 11% off. Do you know the benefits of using sex toys made out of glass? First, glass is non-porous, so it's super easy to clean. You can even put your glass dildo in the dishwasher, which I probably would not because my kids unload it, but it's good to know that you can. I love the glass toys from YONI Pleasure Palace. I had a Keeping It Hot couples retreat and I chose the Sacred Squirter as one of the toys for the welcome pack. It's made out of translucent pink glass and it's shaped like a dragon's tongue. Honestly, it looks like a beautiful little sculpture, and the sensation from it is incredible. Glass toys present a firm touch, which is welcome for most G-spot and prostate play. And they often have special nubs and ridges for a whole different sensation. And did you know that you can also put glass toys in the fridge or preheat them with warm water to completely change the experience? Go to YoniPleasurePalace.com and use code KEEPINGITHOT for 11% off. First, tell us, who are you? How long have you guys been together? Like, tell us about your awesome family, all of the things that you have going on. And you decided to jump on this crazy last minute trip
to the first ever Keeping It Hot Couples Retreat in Banff, Alberta. And I just want to hear all about it. Tell everybody who you are, Adam and Lynn.
So I'm Adam Winter. It's my wife, Lynn. We've been married for 33 years. We have 2 grown kids with their own families. So they're almost 28 and almost 31, which scares me. 2 grandchildren. We now live in Burlington, Vermont. We go into Canada a fair amount on motorcycles.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was one of the things that you told me the first night we met. And I was like, that is cool, right? You guys both are fully suited up in your gear. And do you go just on day trips that are really far back in, or do you go and stay at hotels up in Canada?
So far, it's only been day trips. I only started this about 5 years ago because I didn't have any hobbies. I was a workaholic. I had my own business, sold the business, didn't know what to do with myself. Turned to Lynn, said, I'd like to get a motorcycle. She said, okay.
So it was an okay right away, Lynn, on the motorcycle?
Well, yeah, I mean, because he was really interested in it, and I was happy to see that he wanted to pursue something outside of what we do together.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that, people are able to do something, not necessarily always with their partner.
Yeah.
So,
but you got in on it too, though, right?
Well, yeah. So it's kind of funny. I got a phone call, and it was one of his friends who he's riding with, and he had an accident. He fell and he broke his foot. His ankle. Okay. So his friends were like so worried that I would not want him to ride a motorcycle anymore. They kept telling me, this is just a freak accident. It was low speed. You don't have to worry. And so they're trying to convince me. And I had, no inclination to tell him that he can't ride. I mean, he's an adult, Then he came to me a short while later and said, Lynn, I used to ride sometimes on the back. He says, my motorcycle is not really meant for the 2 of us on the same bike. It's not big enough, and it's not comfortable. So he said, maybe you want to ride a scooter or something. And I was like, I don't want to ride a scooter. That's kind of lame.
Adam, were you saying scooter because you were like, she'll be more comfortable with it? And she's like, yeah, but it's not cool enough.
Yeah. Well, I never wanted to ride a motorcycle because I am not coordinated to do the clutch, all the things you have to do on a motorcycle. So we found one that was automatic. That's a motorcycle. So I actually, to get my license, I did have to learn how to ride a regular motorcycle. But as soon as I was done with that, I was saying, like, I'm just going with the automatic, so I can just concentrate on riding, accelerating, braking, and I don't have to worry about the clutch.
So was going to the couples retreat in Banff scarier, less scary, or the same as the first big motorcycle trip you took?
Scarier.
Scarier. What about for you, Lynn?
It was not scarier. It was
okay. So
it was more.
Adam booked it, right? Adam booked it, and it was scarier for him. Is this true?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but go on, Lynn. Go on. It was.
I was kind of excited to see what it would be like.
She was excited to go to Banff.
I wanted to go to Banff because it was beautiful, and the castle like hotel pictures, but I was also curious, I guess is a good word for it. It was something that was important to Adam, like I knew that. So and then as we said, made the commitment, I became more and more curious and looking forward to finding out what it was going to be like, and meeting other couples and not feeling like alone. Like, I sort of was feeling I was the only person that had issues, and it was nice, that once we've had children, for so many years, and your life is revolving around your children, you almost like forget what it was like just to be the two of you, and that romance feeling that we had like before children. I was thinking I was the only one that was experiencing this, and kind of gave up on, got used to the fact of not having regular intimate relations.
Sorry, Lynn, and one of the things you told me at the retreat was, I think it was just after like the first day and a half or something you were saying that you were talking to other people about like similar upbringings, how it was just so common, and it even remains the majority, that in families, sex isn't talked about growing up, right? It's this thing that like, you can't talk about, but it's supposed to be good in some circumstances. But just tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, growing up, it just never was talked about. This is kind of a funny story. So I'm the 6th of 7, and I'm the youngest girl. And so all of a sudden I got my period, and I didn't know what the heck it was. Like, my mother had never talked to me about it. And when I woke up and I'm panicked, and I go running into my mother's bedroom, my parents' bedroom, I was like, "Oh, Mom, what's happening?" And she said, "Didn't your sisters tell you?"
Oh, goodness. Didn't. She's like, "Who dropped the ball around here?" And you were like, So that's a pretty good example of like how little it was spoken about. Do you all think that even if we have little to no sexual education or modeling or familiarity talking about it, that there's something about the chemistry at the beginning of a relationship that sort of like kind of brushes that under the rug, and you guys can like, that most people can like get along well enough? What do you guys think?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, because it's like the time that not being certain about how we're going to communicate or what we really want, or not being like just open and on the same page and really feeling like we're teammates with our partner and we get to do this together, instead of like this push-pull of who wants it, who's not getting it, that kind of thing, instead of it being a power struggle. That the power struggle thing really happens for a lot of people once they've come out of the fog of the little kid years, right? Because there's enough chemistry maybe to just get us married and get us knocked up or whatever, right? And then when real life starts hitting us in the face, it's an easy thing to let fall away.
Well, we actually took 3 years. We waited 3 years before we had our son, so we could do a little traveling and get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed that, and that was good.
Yeah.
But then, 20 years of taking care of kids, we needed to figure out how to reconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam, did you first find my content? Was it back last October, or was it even before that? When was it? And how did it just come up on your feed on Facebook or TikTok?
So every year about this time, I used to get depressed, and we'd have a big fight because she would think everything's perfect and I wanted more, and I wasn't articulating well enough what I wanted. We finally started seeing a counselor. It's a couple of counselors. I mean, there was a husband and wife that talked to people. Part of the issue was I didn't know what I wanted, so I had to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then we were able to work on us. And then in the October timeframe of 21, I was just sort of searching for relationship advice, trying to find someone who would have something. And you came up, and I started watching, how to make monogamy hot, the videos, and trying to get ideas. But I didn't really think Lynn looked at much of what I sent her, or.
Well, I mean, I actually didn't.
Yeah, and that's and Lynn, you can tell me I'm not going to take any offense at all. I have heard this story so many different ways for so many different days. And I don't know what it is, if I take a little while to grow on people or what it is. But so Adam would send you videos, and what videos were they that he first sent you? Because this is something that I want our audience to hear, is that for a lot of people, it's a real step towards vulnerability to say, hey, I'm going to send my partner a video about our relationship, any aspect of our relationship that's maybe not practiced on a regular basis discussing, right? Like if you guys have a dishwasher system in your house, like you could be like, hey, I want to tweak this. Let's try the cutlery over here, blah, 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 right? You could talk about it. But there are all of these things that are like the elephant in the room. And when we find something on social media that we think might help, might just like start to unravel that thing a little bit so we can get to a different place or at least move it around. Like, you know, it's this thing that we never really get progress or change around. What were the videos that he sent you, Lynn? And what did you think at first? Like he just wants sex or he's being annoying or what is he searching? What was it?
Well, I mean, he would send me the links and, you know, I would say, okay. And I wouldn't delete the emails. I mean, I kept them in my inbox.
Probably still there.
They're probably still there.
Unread.
Yes. And, you know, I just like, okay, I'll do that when I get a chance. But like, I'm extremely busy with work and then also we have some rental properties. So I do the accounting for that. He does too. He has a couple of properties he does the accounting for. So I just never got around to looking at it. But he would tell me, and he listened to your book and he would tell me more and more. So it was really him telling me about you and what you have that, you know, got me more interested. I didn't really have the time to, you know, like go back and look at the links. And actually one time we were on our way out to dinner and he was listening to the book and it was the schedule. It was the chapter about when you guys were going to the clubs and everything. And I'm like, what is this? You know?
It's like, oh, that how to keep monogamy hot ladies a swinger? What are you doing?
Yeah,
right?
that sort of created a little problem.
Well, and it confuses me. It confuses me. Like when I'm talking to my podcast agency that helps book me on other people's shows. And then I'm talking to my producer that I'm working on my reality unscripted show with. And whenever she goes, well, because you help people with their sex life, I go, wait, what? No, I don't. And she's like, Ashley, I'm like, oh my God, it's so weird what I think I do, what it looks like I do, how confusing it can be. I don't know if I need to go to a shaman or a branding expert, but yeah, it's confusing to all of us. So Lynn, you're like, wait a minute. He hadn't booked the retreat yet though, right?
No.
Okay. But you're like, hey, what's going on with this?
Yeah. So then he mentioned about the trip and I'm like, well, I'd like to go see Banff, but what is this? What's going on at this couples retreat?
At this point, you saw the cover of your book.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like, oh my God, what do I tell my boss where I'm going? When I asked for time off.
And what did you tell each other about where you were going? What was the understanding between the two of you?
My understanding was that it was going to be an opportunity to spend time together and learn how to be more intimate. I did have that expectation.
Yeah.
So, and I feel that for me, I'm like reverting back, before going to Banff, I was always reverting back to what I did like in college with my boyfriend, and trying to remember. He was not my college boyfriend. I had a different boyfriend. So, I'm trying to remember, what did I do like 40 years ago?
Right. Kind of like trying to think back to like, what do I know works? Kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. And how did that help? Did that help or was it not very helpful?
I knew I needed better ideas.
Yeah. And did you find some better ideas at the retreat?
So it was actually afterwards, after we booked the retreat, you were having the
for him and for her.
So
for him was first, right? That was first. So I watched. Adam wasn't there. He was out, so I watched it first, and then we watched the replay. But when I watched it first, I was like, "Wow, these are really good variations of what I used to know.
That's what I thought too. And just if we could pause right here, because there are going to be people watching and listening to this who haven't done an After Dark workshop. And that first After Dark workshop that we had with Elisa Caro, and she did oral and manual techniques for him. And the variety, I think there were like 13 ways maybe, different types of manual stimulation, and just like the different, and she had this black glass dildo, right? Which was like totally just like neutral, like, cause you need something to show it on. And like the way she's so comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people do that workshop. And the feedback that I got back was like, wow, I can't believe how comfortable that was. And matter of fact. And that's the thing, that if we grew up in an environment where we never saw people comfortable talking about sex, how would we ever think it's a safe thing to do, right? We think either I'm messed up for what I want, or my partner isn't going to want to do this with it. Because usually we're trying to get more connection, but sometimes when we're asking for it, we're going at it from the wrong way. And it actually feels more like a complaint,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is something that I told myself. I think it was probably like 9 to 11 years ago, because I can't remember if I had just had Nico or I just had Luke, but Manny would come to me for sex a lot. And I would be like, oh my God, like I'm nursing and I'm pregnant and I have this other kid, right? Working full time, all this stuff. What I would tell myself, instead of like, oh my God, he wants it again, I would say to myself, he wants to be close to me very often. He needs me very often. He craves closeness with me very often. Like he thinks about being with me intimately, in that closeness, in that just us, blocking everything else up very often, right? And just switching that was like, I don't know, like he wants, he cares, he craves, he needs, or whatever words for people that would feel good. And you and Adam and Lynn, think of it too. If when your partner was asking you for something that they persistently ask you for, right? Whether it's like, drive around with me again to look at Christmas lights, or it's like, please do this with me, or let's have sex, or, you know, it's like this thing they want you to do or want to do together.
One of the best ways to get in the mood for partner play is to have more solo playtime, especially if it's not easy for you to experience spontaneous desire. Grab a splash blanket. That's my favorite. 100% waterproof, super soft sex blanket. And make a solo date with yourself once a week or more. Have a bath, light a candle, listen or read something sexy, and indulge in a little self-care in the form of solo pleasure. Instead of relying on your partner for satisfaction, flip the script and embrace the truth that your sexuality belongs to you and you alone. But sharing it with your partner can lead to incredible heights. Grab yours at splashblanket.us and use code KEEPINGITHOT for 11% off. That's splashblanket.us and use code KEEPINGITHOT.
What if we put the word in there that we most want our partner to feel about us, you know? Because I really wanted to feel like needed and loved by Manny in a really deep way for a really long time. And I didn't feel the asking for sex as part of that. But now it does feel like part of it, you know, because we're at a more solid place. I'm at a more solid place. And that's what I think a lot of people realize from reading Swing. Yeah, it's a marriage memoir, sort of, but people who are single, people who have never been married, people who are divorced, it's like, oh, no. That union with self, it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to get this done. We're never going to get it done. We're never going to get it, like, be able to ring the bell, like I figured out life, okay? I think you just get to ring the bell when you die. You're like, woo, made it through that time. Like, right? Need a break before the next incarnation. But when we really put in that word that we really want from them, right? And then what if we could feel that in their asking, right? What if when they say, hey, Could you do this for me? Could you do that? Hey, can we change our plans on the weekend? What if every time you said that, what if every time your partner said that, we heard, hey, my happiness and your happiness and our time together, the most important thing to me. So let's take a look at what our commitments were. What would be the word that each of you would want to put in there?
I was thinking of putting love in when you were talking about that.
Love. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just giving of self. I guess it's not one word, but giving, I guess, would be the word.
Oh, like they want to give to you?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
oh, okay, because that's what you like to feel.
Oh, yes, because, you know, as a gift, it's like a gift of closeness, you know, thinking of it that way. And as opposed to, okay, he wants it again, and that means I have to figure out a way to, you know, they can't, you know, it was like more of an obligation, you know, before, right. and then
okay,
not.
So let's pause right there and back it up like 2 sentences. Okay, just because I think a lot of people feel this way. So many people feel this way. So just if we can like say the words underneath the words. So often when our partner asks us for intimacy, and this could go either way with genders or whatever, right? When our partner asks us for intimacy, what it sounded like you said, Lynn, and like clarify here if I don't quite have it, is that it's like a request to then perform a role or job to some level of standard for them, right? Like they're like, I want you to be in, what you're hearing is like, I want you to be like this incredible sex object for me, or to make this really fun for me, or something like,
Mm-hmm.
am I close?
Yes. So it's, you know, in the past, I might have thought of it as like an obligation, right? And now, after watching the video, I think of it as a mutual gift. So
it is. Even if we were raised in really progressive homes and it was really equitable and it was like, I don't know, women like sex too and blah, 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 because that's how I was raised. I was never for 1 minute like thought it was bad that I would like sexual touch or anything. Like I was just always like, oh, that's one of the coolest parts about being grown up, right? Like I was just more excited than driving. I'm like, grown-ups get to have sex. That's amazing. But there's this thing that happens in Western society, and I'm sure in other parts of the world, it has an even different flavor on it, that we fall into these traditional gender roles. Even like Manny has taken care of the kids as much as I have over the years, because I always worked evenings and weekends and I traveled so much for work. But we have shifted into this mindset, and he will even tell you that he thinks he initiates sex like 90% of the time. I think that's because he tells himself that men initiate more often. I initiate and get turned down very often because kids are home, or this or that, or we should watch for the contractor because if the dog barks, and I'm like, the dog barks, the dog will get over it. Like, let's just get it on. So he considers all of those bids that I make as, well, it wasn't actually a feasible time, so like it doesn't count. But I was like, oh no, I was down. So, but he has it in his mind that men are ready to go all the time, right? Whereas when he's really honest about it, there are a lot of times he doesn't really feel like it because he's tired from the day, or stressed about the teenagers, or had enough of me, right? Because it's like we all reach our limits with people. That's why conversations like this and opportunities like the Keeping It Hot retreats, where we have other modalities coming in, right? We have the sound bath, we have the meditation, we have all of these opportunities, all of these invitations to consider things in a slightly different way. And because I had to convince teenagers that my ideas were really great for them for so long, I have realized that in order to get agreement We don't need a 180 swing or shift. Nobody needs that. If people are looking at things in entirely different ways, they could each shift 2 degrees, and then finally the peripheral vision, they both see that same point over there. That's it, 2 degrees. And we go, oh, we can agree on that. There's some common ground. Okay, so if we have that common ground, our nervous systems relax a little. Nobody's going to get in trouble. Nobody's going to get upset. Nobody's going to like do something that like isn't something that we can just respond to, because that's always our responsibility, right? Just our ability to respond to what's going on in front of us. And a lot of us have this fear that there's some sort of flaw in us, whether we're not smart enough, patient enough, creative enough, loving enough, lovable enough, something, right? That's going to impede our ability to respond to the other person. And the truth is, when we move those fears out of the way a little, our true voice, our braver voice, the things that our heart would love us to say, but quite often our ego's around it, right? It feels too vulnerable, or it feels like they weren't really that nice to me this week. So why would I open my heart and really tell them the beauty I see in them right now? Because won't that just make them be an asshole more often?
If you haven't already, you need to grab Keeping It Hot, the workbook. In a perfect world where we all got incredible sex ed and were free to explore our bodies in a natural and safe way as we grew up, hot sex could naturally be a side effect of a great relationship. But many of us have physical issues and emotional or psychological hangups or communication limitations that make it oh so challenging. The workbook is filled with fun, easy exercises to act as icebreakers to open up new conversations in and outside the bedroom. Go to the links below or keepingithot.com to see where you can get the paperback version of the workbook or download the printable digital version directly to your inbox for immediate delivery.
Can you guys share with us any, well, it sounds like you guys have had a lot of shifts. What do you think is the biggest common agreement you have now, or common, like, sort of like a touch? Do you guys have like a touchstone? You're like, well, remember, we're not going to argue about that kind of thing anymore. Or this is how we're going to talk if we're not understanding each other clearly. Or is there like any repatterning as far as your habits that you guys keep coming back to?
I think we're still working on that one.
Yeah.
So where do you guys think you're at? More like dialing up the awareness for when you're communicating in a way that's like not going to work?
Adam would get down, like related to work or whatever. And I would try to talk to him and see what's bothering you, try to solve the problem for him. And that never worked. You'd say something like, well, we're so lucky, you should be. And that's just totally dismissing, how they're currently feeling, right?
Man. You and Manny are the same, Lynn. Yeah, right? Like, why don't you just feel happy? You could look this way and be happy. And it's like, oh my God, when I feel depressed and or anxious, right? That's one rule in our house. When I'm like, wow, I'm feeling really anxious, the only thing Manny can't say is why. Yeah. If I knew why. Okay. But he'll just go, ooh. Now what he'll say is, oh, go for a hike. You want to take a sauna? Because those are two things, like physical things that move the energy faster. When your partner is having those ups and downs and you're like, why can't you just stay up? Right. Or what do I need to do to get you back up? So go on, Lynn, and you'd be asking those questions.
So, or last week, he had a day like that. And he had a bad week, and he was just really down. And I came in from working, and I asked him, what was wrong, and he, said he just, was feeling down on himself. So I just instead, I just sat down next to him and held his, went to hold his hand and just be close. And and have physical contact, like making sure that I was leaning into him instead of sitting next to him, but not.
So important that you were talking about these details, Lynn, because this is just something that I realized with Manny recently, that when I'm like, oh, I'd like you to be close, I actually want him to be touching me like against, and like firm touch, like kind of like put your arms around me and kind of squeeze, firm touch, right? Because he'll come and he'll go like this. And honestly, it would be better if he didn't touch me. It like the light tap, it like sort of, it stimulates me more when I want like a human weighted blanket, like just jump on my back like a vest, like please just, and that's a common thing, like with people using weighted blankets, like kids who have sensory issues, having like a weighted vest or a sandbag on their lap at school. There are so many reasons. When you're sitting in a big group of people, maybe it's like an extended family gathering, and you have one of the babies or toddlers on your lap, I feel like I'm in a throne. Like I feel like I'm like in this alignment, in this bubble, untouchable, safe, just like rooted in, right? Because you have like this little one who you care about, and they're sitting on you and they smell so good. And it's just like that, that weighted feeling. Here is the thing that people miss so often, that you are hitting on the head here, is that cooperation, helping each other feel safe, bringing the nervous system level down a little bit, is actually so incredibly simple and easy. Simple, and it's easy. Instead of more words, come sit close, lean against your husband who's having a hard week, right? Mm-hmm. Because the truth is, even those of us who have really intense mood swings, it doesn't take us that much to get back to a level where we feel better, right? We may not be like cooking with gas or 100% best flow life, but like life is in and out, right? Where we're at, and that's normal. So Lynn, you're there and you're leaning against him, and then in the next few minutes or evening, what transpires? How does it go?
I mean, I relaxed. I mean, when she just told me, that's what I needed. I didn't want someone to solve the problems. I just wanted someone to be there and hold me and, make me feel important instead of the crap I get at work, which is why I was down.
Okay. Did Kobe win 6 championships? I think maybe 6. In his retirement, as he was winding down, he kept saying in interviews, I wish I would have got the 7th. Like, I really wanted 7. If the first 6 didn't do it for you, the 7th is not going to do it, right? Michael Phelps is the greatest example of this, right? After his last Olympics, where he is finally, it's his second last or last Olympics, when he has like blown every record out of the water, pardon the pun. Okay. His suicidal ideation was at an all-time high. Because 70 medals won't do it. If you think inside of you, and all of us have this a little, but if you have a pretty certain solid, belief about this size, like, and about the weight of a rock in you, that says, you know what, there's a possibility that I may be a worthless piece of shit. Possibility. We're going to find evidence for it all over the place. We're going to find evidence for it in our partner not responding to us the way we want, or our boss. We're going to find it all over. And that's what Elizabeth Gilbert, author of Eat, Pray, Love, says. When we are looking for critique, when we are looking likes, shares, blah, 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 we are not looking for the best in ourselves. We're looking for confirmation of the worst in ourselves every time, because you can have like how many, like, thank you for your patronage, thank you for your support this season, emails from like customers or people you work with. The one person who complains, it's like a kick in the gut, right? And this is what I see even on social media, because we get hundreds of messages a day from people saying, thank you. Wow. I would get like one thing from a writing colleague or something that was, and that would be what would be stuck in my head. And I was like, wait a minute, this is familiar. This is how I used to be with my skating teams. If I had 149 happy parents and one pissed off one. All of my energy and my focus and my conversation to my assistant coaches would be about that asshole parent. And you know what? Whether they were the asshole or I was the asshole, doesn't matter. Maybe I was the asshole that weekend. Doesn't matter whether I was or what I wasn't. The thing is, we are so conditioned to look for the danger that we focus on misery and on where we can maybe have more misery sprout out. The things that are in our heart, the things that are on our mind, the things that like are our unique genius that are going to come out, save that shit for people who appreciate. So you have to actually look for the people who are appreciating, because when we're scavenging around for like, is there any proof here I'm awful? Because that's what we're basically doing, like dumpster diving in like the comments or in, you know, a comment thread, you know, with a Facebook family group or wherever. Or if it's, we're walking past the mirror and we catch an unflattering angle and go, see, ugly. What? Like, we could just look anywhere and see anything, right? So where are we going to put our energy? Because if we're looking down, we're going to get pulled down there. And this is something actually I realized when we were in Banff, because you guys were at the gondola and the lookout at the same time as us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, did we run into each other there?
Yeah, on top.
And I am afraid of heights. And it has gotten more intense as I've gotten older. And I don't want to make my kids afraid of heights. So I do things that are a little scary for me with them so they can kind of experience it, but it's very intense. My only panic attacks I've ever had have been with heights. So I was out there, the view and the clear day we had, and it was just so incredibly beautiful. And I love breathing cold air, because the only time I really did that for the last 20 years living in the US, moving from Canada, was when I was at work, when I was at the rink, when I was in my favorite place in the world, the place where I knew what I was doing, and I knew how to make people happy, and I knew how to help them get closer to the person they knew they could be. You know, I could like take them a little closer every season. So when I breathe cold air, it's like my lungs actually fill to the bottom, and they're like, ah, breath that feels like a breath. So I was out there just breathing because I was trying not to have a panic attack. And for the first time, like I've never realized this, when I'm in a situation where that feels too high, I looked up, and I never knew how much better it felt looking up than looking down.
Mm-hmm.
Because the looking down, my whole body shakes, and I look up and I go, oh, I know this view. This is the view I have all the time, that I like don't look up, but I like know it. I know that vantage point. I know it, and I'm safe. I'm safe like that. Like I can just sit here, I can dance. I'm like, I'm so safe. So I want to invite everybody to figure out what conversations, what friends, what activities, what intention setting and self check-in are you going to do to keep yourself in the integrity of looking up, of looking for the better, being in a situation with your partner that's a little heated or a little sticky, and you assume the best. That's really where I want to be. That's really where I want to be wrong moving forward in my life, where I gave them too much credit. Yes, that feels good to me, actually. Yeah, I gave them too much credit. Ooh, okay. So you were really saying that thing that you said, okay. You know, and then I bring it down. But let's overshoot. Let's overshoot on how good we think the people around us are and how good we are, right? Let's overshoot. Maybe there are all of these new possibilities that are going to be unlocked by you going, ooh, no. I float towards the appreciation. Mm-hmm. And then we feel more appreciated because like those are the people we're hanging out with. Those are the things we're doing for ourselves, for each other. I want you to think of one thing that that is going to help you look up. Whatever feels like courage to you right now, whatever feels like bravery, whatever feels like looking up, like assuming the best, right? Or like, I don't know how it's going to work out, but got a good feeling about this, right? You know that? We've all had that. We just got a good feeling.
Today, I get to introduce you to my great friend, Danielle Simone Brandt, author of Weed Mom, the Canna-Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the Fuck Out. And she's going to talk to us about sex and cannabis. And you are in for a great chat here. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Hit the music. Got lube? Or at the very least, do you have an opinion on lube? I used to think it was sticky, messy, and plain unnecessary. That is, until I tried Coconut. Back in 2020, I received my first 3-pack of Coconut: oil-based lube, water-based lube, and their hemp-infused body oil. And I was sold. Since then, I've used Coconut every single time I've been intimate. Why was it love at first touch? Well, it's made with natural and organic ingredients, so I can feel good about what's going on in my body. It also feels, smells, and tastes great. I have really sensitive skin, so I was worried about how my body would react, but honestly, it leaves my vagina feeling better, like more moisturized and more balanced. Go to coconut.com and use code KEEPINGITHOT for 15% off. That's coconut.com. Hey, Canadian listeners, would you like some Coconut too? You can go to keepingithot.ca and use code KEEPINGITHOT to get 15% off. That's keepingithot.ca.
Hey, Danielle, I'm so happy to have you here today. We're going to be talking in a lot of different directions, a lot of topics. First, tell us about you and your amazing book that I have in front of me. I have right here too.
Oh, yay. Yes, my book is Weed Mom. My name is Danielle Simone Brandt. And, it has a super long subtitle that I don't have to say. People can read it. But it's basically about, introducing folks to the legal marketplace, especially moms, because that's my community. I'm a mom. And I truly saw the pain points that other moms and myself were going through at this moment in my life when I found cannabis. And I realized it helped me with sleep. It helped me with sex. It helped me with, minor pain. It helped me with mood and with parenting, so many things. And so, I realized that moms were hungry for this information. Lots of moms that either experimented a little in college or maybe never tried it at all and just really didn't know where to start with this legal marketplace. So I wanted to kind of hold people's hands and take them through this process, and then also talk about the cultural conversations and how all that is changing. And we can openly discuss this topic now, and we should, in order to change stigmas.
I love this so much. So Danielle and I are writing friends. That's how we met, in a writing group on Facebook a couple of years ago. And it's like, oh, we just need someone who talks about rock and roll, because I'm writing about sex, Danielle's writing about drugs, right?
That's right.
And sex. And Danielle contributed to the workbook as well, with the section on intimacy and cannabis. Okay. And Danielle, I fit into that second category that you were talking about, someone who had never used cannabis. Well, I tried to smoke a joint once, summer after high school. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. If I couldn't inhale properly, it didn't do anything. And I was like, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah. First time, it's so common. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just never interested. I never used any other kinds of drugs at all. But I got to this point in marriage, parenting, life, career, where I was like, oh man, I need a little assistance here. I felt like my skin was itchy from the inside, all the time. My anxiety was high, depression, just everything. This was even before pandemic. So I started taking CBD oil. CBD oil had no THC. And I loved how it just took the edge off, how it just kind of made me feel more like myself. And then everybody will hear this for the first time, but this is not the first time for Danielle to hear this. And I have graduated to tincture that contains some THC too. It's pretty low. But I didn't understand the dosage of it one day, and I accidentally got myself high. So I've been high one time, and I was was messaging Danielle, like with lots of math, right, Danielle? Like,
yeah, you were like 2.5 milligrams twice a day, 5 milligrams. Wait, CBD to THC.
I was like, the ratio, the potency. I was like, just trying to make it make sense. I was like, and I felt kind of paranoid and fidgety. Like I didn't even feel, you're like, I hope you're enjoying this. You're having some good sex. I was like, I'm home alone with the kids and I am like so paranoid. No, this is not fun. Right?
It's a bit of a learning curve. And that's, that's why I wrote the book, is to help people through that learning curve. But I am so happy to, be that personal guide too, because I realize that, it's a little opaque. The subject needs some getting used to.
It is. And I'm just so grateful that the stigma is loosening around this. Well, I just love that stigmas are loosening all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I like to talk about sex like I'm talking about the weather. You talk about cannabis like you're talking about the weather. Like we're just like taboo meteorologists or something, right? Right?
That's great.
I have to tell you that so many people come into my DMs and they're like, oh, I would love to do what you're doing or talk about the things you're talking about or share my stories, but I'm so afraid. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through a bit about the kind of work that you did before writing Weed Mom? And what was that transition like to being like, you're known like as the Weed Mom to so many people now, right? Like,
yes,
right? Like I'm like the keeping it hot lady or whatever. Like, it's like so funny how we feel called to support people in a certain way, but there's also, stigma that we're either accepting or working through in order to do that.
That is so true. I mean, I very incrementally came out of the cannabis closet, I would say, once I started writing about it. Even I was writing about it from some, remove, like as a journalist at first. And, but the more I dove into the personal stories of women in particular who were benefiting from this plant, the more it became personal for me. And so I did start my own cannabis experimentation journey after starting to write about it, because I was just trying to be a freelancer. I was just trying to, get any sort of paid assignment that I could. And while learning about the plant, I fell in love with it. It wasn't the other way around. So then I started my personal experimentation, realized how beneficial it was for me too. And so very slowly, I kind of came out of that closet by, publishing an essay that's, I smoke weed and I'm a responsible parent, something like that, on The Week. That was in 2018, I think. And, but still, I didn't share it on my Facebook. I had this cool publication in theweek.com and I did not share it on my Facebook because I was afraid of the blowback, the pushback, the judgment, all those things.
So get really specific for me. Get really specific for me, because I want to just share with people like how obscure and specific our fears can get. When I was writing Swing, Danielle, I was really afraid of what this Catholic skating mom whose daughter I coached 10 years ago was going to think. Her specifically. Like if it was going to discolor her experience and her daughter's experience of having me as a mentor, because like I wrote about sex clubs, it was so obscure and specific, like the fears that I had. Yeah. Can you share a little bit of that with us? Like who or what did you think was going to happen if you shared this on Facebook?
Well, for one thing, I was a yoga teacher and I was known in my San Diego community as a yoga teacher. I had been to grad school, done academia for a little while, and then really switched gears and found my calling for, about a decade in leading yoga and teaching in DC and San Diego. And, I taught prenatal, I taught not a lot of kids actually, but, tons of flow from beginner to advanced. But my yoga tradition was very steeped in sobriety, that sense of, temperance and being only with yourself, right? Tuning out the rest of the world, focusing inward, dhyana, dharana, these like limbs of yoga. And so I was actually really afraid to come out to my yoga community, almost as much as I was to my parent community. It was a double stigma.
So because I've heard about, or I remember, I think it was a podcast with Gabby Bernstein talking about when she went on an antidepressant after the birth of her child, it saved her life. And the most spiritual thing she ever did was say ego to the side, meds, please. Okay. Mm-hmm. But there was a huge amount of blowback in the spiritual community, right? the tie-in, right? So it's like, even when you're reaching for the natural choice, there's that pushback too. And what I think being a human on planet Earth requires a little support. Like,
you could say that.
I just think like none of us can just like, just do this. Like, I'm going to say bareback and the people are going to think I'm talking about like sex, but anyway, we can't just do this. We can't just be like, yeah, let's just go. Right. I feel like all hands on deck, people, like whatever supports we can get, therapy, friends,
Yes.
writing, podcasts, like self-help books, herbal remedies, like whatever we can do,
Right. Oh, totally. I mean, all the tools are important, but I think that I felt shame that, that yoga and meditation were not enough for me all in and of themselves.
Oh, okay. And that shame that fill in the blank is not enough. My marriage isn't enough. My job isn't enough. The fulfillment that I should feel from being a mother isn't enough, right? It's like such a common fucking experience that when we have needs that aren't being met, like my tendency at the very, from the start is like to just try to push them down and to shame myself for having that need, right? That hunger, that desire, that needing that soothing, right?
Yeah.
That's what I love. That's what I love about CBD. And like I said, now with these small doses of THC, it just my brain is such a busy place to be that bringing it there,
Yes.
I feel so much better. Like I feel sharper. Yeah. So,
oh my gosh, so much. And I feel like I can get more juice out of life basically with cannabis as one of my tools. It's not the only tool in my toolbox. I have many, and holistic natural approaches have been part of my life for a very long time, with yoga, with meditation. My dad owns a natural food store in Indiana. So for, since my teens, he's been, mentoring me and helping me with supplements and foods and nutrition, all those things. So that, all that is important, but cannabis actually really, it helps me tune in to the moment and just enjoy those moments so that I do feel more fulfilled. Honestly, I feel more fulfilled in my role as a mother. I feel more fulfilled in my partnership and marriage. I feel, just happier as a human being. And like, why would we deny ourselves that? Why would we say, I don't deserve that, because of stigma or because of shame or because of the sense of not being able to take care of oneself.
Yeah. And I always thought that taking anything would like take me out of the moment. You know what I mean? That I just would feel more numb. But that's the really cool thing and I don't know what dosage actually qualifies as microdosing. I don't really know. I was going to be like, that's the thing about microdosing, but I have no idea even if that's what I've tried. But yeah, that it really can dial up your attention, dial down your anxiety, right? Like get you to like a better place.
It's dose dependent and, and it really depends on each individual's endocannabinoid system. That's the thing about cannabis is one size doesn't fit all, but when you dial in and find that sweet spot, that ratio of cannabinoids, whether it's CBD and THC or some different ones, you dial in your terpenes, there's, definitely, like I said, a learning curve to it. But once you do that, the dose dependent part of THC means that up to your sweet spot, it's enhancing to the moment, to your attention, to your sensation, which is excellent for sex, obviously. But, if you cross a certain point with THC, people can get a little spacey. They can numb out. They can, kind of check out a little bit. So it's a matter of like so many things dialing in, finding that sweet spot for you.
Right. And I love, and I'm going to go to like the beginning of your book, but I really love the preface of Danielle's book starts with "Dear Alcohol," right? And
we're breaking up.
Okay. So here's the really, really interesting part of this, right? Mommy wine culture, wine o'clock, blah, 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 mommy juice bullshit. It's been driving me wild for years. Like, okay, not funny, actually not funny, right?
Yeah.
I have history of addiction, in my family, it's prevalent. And alcohol, like, even if it's like one glass of wine, even if it's like a like a spritzer or whatever, takes that edge off like really, really easily for me. Like to the point where I'm like, that is a little scary, like how effective that is. Like I'm telling you, Danielle, like 1 or 2 sips and it's like, oh. So I've been paying attention to this for, I would say probably like 7 or 8 years. I'll take a sip and I'll be like, wow, that is interesting how much that like, just relaxes me. And then I'm like, okay, I just want to be really aware of how and when I'm using this. And the idea of like, oh, a couple of glasses of wine after dinner, or like, White Claw after White Claw after White Claw at like a barbecue or whatever, is still like so, ingrained, like baked into our society that like it's no big deal. And still there's this stigma, like even now, like, sharing, oh yeah, I use CBD tincture. I'm wondering if people are going to go like, oh my God. Okay. But the way that I can carefully dose with cannabis and the way I feel after, let's talk about that too. Like the during and the after, it's so much different. Even if I have one drink, like one glass of rosé before bed, I wake up feeling a bit anxious, like more anxious than normal.
Yep. Anxiety. That's a thing.
Anxiety. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, alcohol spikes cortisol, plain and simple.
Okay.
So it's a temporary relief from stress for a lot of people, but long-term it exacerbates the problem. And that's, it's a vicious cycle that can really get out of control quickly, I think, for a lot of moms who, like you said, like it's freaking hard out here. We are dealing with so much. And I totally understand that desire to reach for something that helps you let go of that mom brain, that, constantly running to-do list, that, low to medium to high level of anxiety that we just, accept as part of our everyday lives. So, so wine, I get why it's this really common tool, and it's legal and it's, it's acceptable. But, physiologically, it's actually much worse for us than cannabis. Cannabis supports health in the right doses. It actually brings your endocannabinoid system to a place of homeostasis so that you are less stressed, your appetite is normalized, your sleep, and desire for rest is normalized, your mood is stabilized. Like all those things promote health and well-being. Alcohol diminishes, long-term diminishes all those things. It's toxic to the organ systems. And I'm not like, ragging on alcohol. I do have very rarely I'll have a glass now, like super rarely, but I pay for it. I know that I feel differently the next day. It does spark migraines for me often too. So, I avoid it mostly. So, and then you also talked about the after effects. And the truth is that with the right dose of cannabis, afterwards, you just feel normal. You just feel like, you hardly even notice it wearing off. With alcohol, there's often a, dramatic difference. If you've been drinking all night and then, you get home, you usually feel pretty awful by the end. And then of course the hangover and the cortisol and the blood sugar instability, it adds up.
All of the things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the glucose.
Yeah. So what I hear quite often from people in my DMs is that women primarily use alcohol regularly to try to relax for sex. And some of them are like, I just have to, I know I just have to. And some are like, I thought everybody did this. And then some are like, oh, I know this is a little weird. This feels like a crutch. Let's talk about cannabis and sex. Let's talk about, that transition from taking care of everybody else's needs, whether that's your family members, whether that's your children, aging parents, pets, people at work, like really that giving. It's not that easy all the time. Just flip a switch into like receiving mode, right? Receiving mode. So many people message me, men. About 80% of my direct messages and emails are from men, and they'll say, "Hey, saw your video, it was amazing. Like, gives me more insight into this dynamic with my spouse, or I understand now what my partner's been saying about this or this. I would love suggestions on these things." And quite often, what they say, the men say, is like, I would love for my wife to like give to herself. Like I would love for her, but she's giving to other people. And I love when partners realize that the hesitancy or lack of interest in physical intimacy a lot of times doesn't always have to do with them not wanting sex with you, but like the permission to say, oh yes, I want to do something right now that feels really good for my body, right? Because normally we're like, how do I ignore that ache in my back? How do I ignore this? How do I get these things done? Right? It's just like, body, you're such a pain in the ass. Like, why do I have to deal with you? Because there are all these things that I need to get done in the world.
Right. That's our paradigm. That's our sort of masculine paradigm, right? Outward focused, I think, it just sort of the sort of patriarchy implants this, right? That self-care isn't important, that rest is not important. But cannabis helps facilitate that for me and for so many women that I've talked to. It actually helps us slow down enough to realize what we need and what we want. And facilitate that self-care, whether it's, I take a few tokes and I get on my yoga mat, and then I feel really juicy and good. And then I crawl into bed and I want to smuggle and maybe more, or whether I tune in, what I really need is time away from my family. So, cannabis helps me realize that too. And just taking a walk in my neighborhood with the dog is something that helps clear my mind and feel like myself again mentally, so that then I'll, probably be in a better mood for intimacy later on. So I completely agree with you. Self-care is hard AF for moms to do, and important, really important. And cannabis helps. Yeah.
And what are the different products or different ways that people are using cannabis with their intimacy? What are different ways that they can use them?
Yeah. So lots of different ways, inhalation is what is going to give you that, very quick onset and the sort of body and mind high, so to speak. And then you can, of course, titrate that lower or higher based on what experience you're looking for. But I really like inhalation for sex because of the quick onset. And it doesn't have to be smoke. It can be vaporizing or vaping. Those are two different things that I talk about in the book. There's also low dose edibles. And we now have more quicker acting edibles. Like it used to be, you had to eat something, wait an hour to 2 hours even to see what effects it would have. With tinctures under the tongue and other, faster acting edibles, like drinks are in that category. Actually, cannabis drinks are in that category. Interesting.
I didn't even know there were cannabis drinks until right now. Interesting.
Yes,
okay.
There are. And some of them are mimicking even, like rosé type flavors. I had some in Canada that were fantastic. Those are the best ones I've had so far, actually, up there. And every market is different because of how legalization has played out, state by state, every market is different. But fast acting edibles are a great way to, to tune in for sex, because edibles give more of a body high, generally speaking. And that means relaxation for a lot of people.
Yeah. Let's talk about mind high or head high, body high. Because I was talking about this with one of my friends who inhales, who smokes, and who has since, like early teens.
Yeah.
And has had gone through the stigma, even personally, I shouldn't be doing this. And then really saying I'm not going to do that anymore. And then culturally, this shift has come in, right? And it's just that's the thing that I thought was my nemesis for so long. And now it's good for everybody, whatever. Anyway, but she was saying how she's trying to figure out if inhalation is the way that she wants to continue or not. And talking about how that head high, which I've never really had. So let's talk about just the differences between that, because there are probably some people watching this who have had an experience with cannabis that maybe wasn't the greatest. And they're thinking okay, I would like that sort of support. I would like to try something, but I don't want it to be like this.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, if you're kind of curious or kind of newbie listeners get one thing from this, it's that cannabis is not one size fits all. If you tried it once and you didn't like it, there are so many other products, so many other ways to consume that, I really encourage people to experiment a little bit. So edibles, generally speaking, tend to be more body focused. They're processed through your digestive system and through your liver. The cannabinoid delta-9 THC is actually contributed to a different cannabinoid, 11-hydroxy THC, which is a little bit more potent even. So that's why we always say start very low and slow with edibles. But like I said, they tend to give a more relaxed body experience. And a lot of newbies do like that for sex. Again, just dose dependent, don't overdo it. Sometimes in the dispensary, they're dosed at 10 milligrams per serving, sometimes 5 milligrams per serving, depends on your state. I would definitely start lower. 10 is probably too high if you're new.
That's what I accidentally dosed myself with when I was messaging Danielle that night. I totally misunderstood the dosing of the tincture I was taking. And I was like, oh my God, I just took 10 milligrams of THC. I was like, and this is just this, I'm high, Danielle.
Yes.
So even starting as low as like 2.5 or 5, right? Or
2.5 or 5 if you're sensitive or if you're new, absolutely. But 10 milligrams is not going to, cause anybody to freak out probably, but you will feel it. You will.
Nobody will freak out except me. I'll be like, is this high? I'm like, right?
After a while, I was like, yep, she's definitely high.
Yeah. You're like, you're not going to die. You're fine. Try to enjoy it. I was like, I don't like this.
That's why we start low and go slow. But it happens. Yeah. It's a really common experience. And so I'm hoping to like ease that, that first experience for a lot of folks. When it comes to inhalation, generally we've had these two categories for a long time with cannabis flower, which is sativa and indica. That those are starting to break down in terms of like how we understand them. Sativa was traditionally associated with the head high, with the, like more kind of creative, can be focusing, but it can also be kind of like, very, very stimulating, let's say, for some folks. Whereas indicas are, they were known as indicouch, right? So that's all about like chill, watch TV, have some popcorn and Ben and Jerry's, maybe you want to snuggle, but you probably won't feel like super excited for sex, right?
You'll be fine. Yeah.
And then we've got hybrids that are a mix of those two. Those categories, though, are breaking down. It's much more about the ratios of CBD to THC and the terpenes. The terpenes are the aromatic compounds in cannabis that you know about from reading some of my stuff. But these terpenes are in all the plants that we know, in pine needles, in basil, in lemongrass, in
lavender,
lavender.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And they really influence the direction or the experience of the high. And so cannabis strains that have terpenes like limonene and pinene are going to be more stimulating and more sort of head focused. And strains that have more linalool, that's the one that's related to lavender, or myrcene, those are strains that are going to have that more couch lock, chill experience. But everybody's endocannabinoid system is a little different. So there's still a layer of experimentation that has to happen, even knowing that.
Yep. And here in Pennsylvania, we have dispensaries. People are so friendly, Danielle, and and they're packed. I'm like, how do you get into this business? Anyway.
Oh my gosh, it's a nightmare business.
I know. I can't. I don't really want to. I have too many businesses already. You
do. Okay. And then actually another way is getting back to how to consume for sex is serums and lubes, putting it directly on.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about this because I was sent Foria brand, maybe. I think it was Foria brand by actually author Zoe Kors. She wrote Radical Intimacy and her publisher sent me an advanced copy and the Foria. So the only thing that trips me up is I have to put it on 15 minutes before. Yeah. And I don't plan that well for that.
They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but in the bedroom, there's always room to learn. Show your willingness to try new things with the After Dark workshops. They're private, recorded, guided pleasure practices from trained tantric coaches and sex therapists. Go to keepingithot.com for our single workshops and bundles. Topics include oral and manual for him, oral and manual for her, intro to dirty talk, intro to squirting, secrets of female pleasure, control your ejaculation masterclass for men, and more. Workshops start at $25. It's the cheapest and sexiest date night you can get. Check out the After Dark workshops at keepingithot.com.
I had used it a couple times, I think, with like the right timing window. And sensitivity was increased. So let's talk about those options.
Yeah. And was that a CBD product only, or did it have both CBD and THC? Do you remember?
I need to look at the label. I don't know.
because both are available. If they shipped it to you, it might have just had CBD, but maybe they fudged the rules and got you some in THC too. So generally speaking, CBD when it comes to topicals on all of our lady parts, is more pain relieving. So if you have pain associated with sex, CBD lubes and serums tend to be really helpful. THC tends to enhance sensation a little bit more. And you also have combo products that do both, or that will give you a boost in both areas. THC enhances blood flow. We have endocannabinoid receptors all through the reproductive tract and the genitals. So we have parts in our bodies that are meant to receive these cannabinoids and interact with them, which is fascinating. And also we produce endogenous cannabinoids. So, our system exists for our own cannabinoids and for plant-based cannabinoids, in my opinion. There are suppositories as well. Some people use cannabis suppositories where you would definitely have to prepare in advance and, let it melt and, really coat everything nice and well before you'd want to be intimate. But you can actually even get high from that if there's enough THC, and if it's inserted high enough in your body, it'll reach the circulating bloodstream that could get you high too.
Okay.
Fascinating, huh?
Fascinating. All right. How much THC do you need to put in your vagina to get high? How much?
I don't think we've determined that, but I would say, a few milligrams, just kind of on the vulva is not going to get you high. But if you have, 10 milligrams of THC in a suppository that's going high up in your body, yes.
I'm thinking I would probably yes, I guess I'm okay, this is fascinating. And it doesn't even have to be your vagina if you just can insert it.
It does not have to be your vagina. Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
But better for the receiving person, I think. So the person, so vaginally or anally, I think that they are effective. But for people with penises, they don't seem to be quite as helpful. I think that when it comes to sex and cannabis, it's meant for women.
It's a woman's world.
It's a woman's game.
Yeah. Well, that's why flowers look the way they do, right?
The cannabis plant that we get the flowers from are the female ones. They kill the male plants. The male plants are not helpful.
Wait, this makes so much sense. Right? As far as just horticulture, propagation, cures like. No, we're getting into homeopathy there. But anyway, I do really like that. Really, really love that. Okay, so tell me this: cannabis with penis holders, because whiskey dick is what I was going to say. There we go. That's the term.
That's the term,
whiskey dick, right? How, and I don't know what the physiological response is, but with alcohol, sometimes, there's loss of erection. It's more difficult to have physical intimacy, to partake in physical intimacy. What's that like with cannabis and men?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I really think that cannabis is best for women when it comes to sex. There are men who do regularly partake and enjoy, mild elevation for sex, but generally speaking, I think that it requires some degree of focus to sustain an erection. I mean, I don't know, but I've heard.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and that if your focus is really, scattered, if you've, crossed that THC threshold into that more checked out space, it can be harder for men to actually, engage.
Yeah. So it really is. Okay. It really is benefit to the ladies here. Okay. I like that so much.
I think so. But, like I said, as dose dependent, a small amount, I think, for men who are interested, I think it's worth experimenting with, but you don't want to sort of cross that line. Whereas, there's a little bit more sort of forgivability with with women. If I've crossed that line and I'm pretty mellow and pretty chill, I can still enjoy it quite a lot. My husband likes to be active in that process and give me pleasure. And I'm yes, I will receive. Yes, thank you.
Well, and shouldn't we all just lay back and receive more? I think, yes. Yes. Training that part of us. Okay. So question here. Let's pivot to talking. So my kids, ever since I brought CBD products and then now what we have THC products into the house, I've always told them what it is cannabis, you might hear it called marijuana, weed. Like I tell my kids everything, right?
Mhm.
I tell
Me
them
too.
like why I have it. I also tell them, because my oldest is almost 15,
Mhm.
I've told him, hey, if one of your friends ever offers you weed, if you're curious, like I actually have stuff I paid for here in the cupboard, tincture. If you ever want to know what that feels, I want you to try this
Yep.
with me before you ever inhale something that a friend hands you. Like that's just how I
Yep.
drank alcohol in my parents' house, before I ever drank it with a friend. Like that's how I just like to do things. Like kids,
Yep.
do it here safe.
Yep. I hear you.
So how do you talk to your kids? How do you talk to your kids? How do you recommend people? What are the different ways that you've seen? What is your approach to this, Danielle?
Yes, I mean, this is such an important topic. I have a whole chapter on it in the book because, to me, it's important to change the narrative. There has been such a stigmatized, false narrative about cannabis in our society for so long, and the way we change that is educating kids differently, teaching them to appreciate and respect the plant. I'm not teaching them that like it's a free for all. We have boundaries, absolutely, but we talk about cannabis a lot. They totally, of course, know what I do for a living. That I wrote a book called Weed Bomb. It's everywhere, and that and they overhear me in conversation talking about cannabis all the time. So it's a part of our daily lives. And I know that it's not going to be a part of every American household's daily life, but I do still think it's important to address and to normalize, even if you don't consume it in your house, because it's everywhere now. You can see billboards in a lot of states advertising cannabis. There are dispensaries, integrated into neighborhoods now. And I think that's a good thing because I think cannabis is a wellness tool, but again, it does deserve respect and education. So, I tell my kids, it's a plant. This is why I use it. I use it for some medicinal reasons and some, quote unquote, recreational or just, relaxation reasons. They know that it's not safe for developing brains, at least, in larger quantities, and something that, we want to be cautious of before they're around 21, even 25, I have to say, because of brain development.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that. Tell us more about that, because I didn't know that.
Well, the prefrontal cortex isn't, completely developed until about 25. And that's about, executive decisions and rational thought and decision-making, things like that. So, younger brains are more subject to potential addiction issues with all substances, including cannabis. And younger brains potentially can be affected developmentally by cannabis. But, we're talking about like large sustained quantities daily, high THC use, daily dabbing, things like that. Experimentation with teens and cannabis is not something that I'm, terrified about. If it's clean cannabis, like that's what I'm most interested in is like, is it actually real weed and not, some street crap, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, so I preach moderation. I also say, when you're ready or when your friends start talking about it, talk to me because I can give you the whole scoop on what's safe and what's not safe and the appropriate dosage. I want my kids to experience the first time they experience cannabis and the first time they experience alcohol. I want them to understand what they're doing. And like that, you would teach a kid that the first time they drank, an entire bottle of whiskey is not an appropriate dose, right? So the first time you have a THC edible, 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, not an appropriate dose. Those are out there, but we need to understand like what's right for bodies. But it's a continuing conversation, just like the sex conversation or talking about other difficult stuff, death, God, like whatever. Like we have these opportunities in our daily lives, I think, with our kids to just pepper in like little bits of facts like, hey, CBD is anti-inflammatory and might help, if you have a sore muscle or muscle, I think topicals are great, for kids, CBD topicals. So dropping little bits of education, little bits of normalization, talking about how, it's a lens to talk to kids about social justice and the fact that the drug war has been this, completely messed up racist endeavor for a very long time, criminalizing disproportionately Black and brown people. And, my kids know about, racism. My kids know about, BLM. We go out and we participate because I want them to be citizens of the world. And cannabis is just another lens to talk about important issues.
It really is. And I'm glad that you brought up that part because I feel that way around the content that I make. I want to be proactive in questions my kids will have with things that come up with friends, or just, I want to be their first line of information right? So I continuously, any tiny window of opportunity, like, and what I consider a window of opportunity to discuss something and what my husband considers are so different. He's like, that's not a window. Like that is like that is like you are in that you painted a window, like, right?
There was a crack and you put a wedge in it, and then you got there.
Right. It was like there wasn't even any light coming through. What is happening? But what I say to him, and I think part of this is because I coached adolescents for so many years, right? Like over 2 decades, I coached adolescents. And when I was getting paid to tell other people's kids what to do, like I took that job pretty seriously. It wasn't just about technique on the ice. Anything that a kid, and I was like my athletes, but really I've made it my job. And some people will be like, you shouldn't do this. Fuck off. I'm going to do this forever. Okay. If any kid within my view or earshot says or does something that I see as requiring some guidance, I step in. I could be like in the supermarket. I could be, and no matter which direction it is, like if someone's like really kind, if someone else's kid is super kind and like picks up something that someone dropped and handed, I'll be like, that was really thoughtful of you to do that. Like, I want to reinforce, I feel like as an adult on planet Earth, it's my job to reinforce great behavior in children. Right.
I love that. Yeah.
Maybe it's their first time actually doing that, right? Because like there's just like your own internal resistance, like to actually like put yourself out there and pick the thing up and take it to the person or whatever. Maybe, and that's what I tell Manny, my husband. I say, listen, when you hear a kid say something, there's a chance that is the very, very first time they've tried those words. You know, we try on all different things as adolescents. And if they knew you were within earshot and you didn't correct them or say, whoa, we don't talk like that. That's all I'll say. I'd be like, whoa, hey, we don't say those words in this house. That's not how we talk to people. If you were trying to say XYZ, then you could say XYZ, but we don't use that. This is why. Do you know what that word means? And like, I call family meetings for like the kids hanging around our house all the time. Family meeting. All the kids have to like come to where I am. And I'll be like, I heard this word. Does anybody know what that word means? Well, no, actually, it actually means this. And this is why we don't use it. And blah, blah, blah. So I say anytime they do something and an adult is within earshot, quite often kids know. And if they don't hear anything, then they quickly make assumptions about what it was that they just did. And then they may be more likely to repeat it or accelerate it, whatever. So I parent other people's kids all the time. And I hope other people parent mine. Because we don't have eyes and ears everywhere, right?
We don't. And, you know, I would like to be more a part of that community. I don't feel like that, you know, I've moved so many times, but that might be part of it, is that, you know, we haven't been embedded deeply enough in a community for it to feel comfortable to do that, you know, for me to tell other people's kids what to do, even though I do offer guidance. Like I usually, you know, I will direct things more toward like my own kid if other kids are around, but I'm hoping.
See, it's funny. I think it is a unique situation. I think with my profession, I coached other people's kids for a decade before I had my own.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
And hundreds a year. So it's like, oh no, I can help kids. They need to know what I have to say. Right.
And I'm stoked that you're doing that, because I'm completely on board with the way that you are guiding your kids. I mean, when it comes to the way that you parent your own kids, I feel like we have so much in common. I tell my kids everything too. Like we talk about everything like ad nauseum, you know, but like they understand the real world, I think, pretty well for kids their age because of the depth of conversation that I trust them with, you know. And to me, like honesty with my own kids has always been an important priority for me, because I want them to come to me and to trust me and to know that I'm not, you know, that I am honest, and that also that I can hold their, you know, their burdens. You know, so absolutely, I want to be that first person they come to when they're faced with issues in the real world. And so I make myself a safe place.
And I think when we are writing and speaking in an area that's taboo and that has so many tendrils that, like you said, go into social justice, go into misogyny, go into abuse, go into these different things, sort of like keeps us honest, I think, like in our home life. Like, am I being as honest and transparent? Am I really practicing like what I preach or like the things I share? So I think that it creates even more opportunities to, oh yeah, like if you worked at a bank, Danielle, you'd probably tell your kids fewer details about the work you do, right? But
For
when
sure.
it's something that like has the potential to be misunderstood, or the potential to be stigmatized, or like, you know, even all these slang terms around these words, right? It creates an opportunity where we can really get super clear and specific with our kids about what is what, and what things are gray areas, right? And like what's not.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think that's the most important thing the most important thing for me to convey to your audience is that it's a series of conversations. Like it's not a one and done, and you don't have to feel like super stressed. Like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell them all the correct information about cannabis all at once and I have to know everything. That's not true. You just need to, you know, like pepper in those conversations, have frequent, you know, like touch base frequently, and, you know, and answer their questions. Like they might have some questions, and model responsible use. That's the other piece of it. If you model responsible use in your home, just like as we've been saying for years and years with alcohol, right? If we model responsible use, if we let kids have their first sip of alcohol under supervision where we know they're safe, like that to me feels like a pretty different story.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. It's so interesting because even in my mind, around talking to kids in cannabis, I sort of feel like, okay, yeah, we're like inventing the wheel here, but I'm Canadian, Danielle. There was alcohol use everywhere when I was a kid, right? Right?
Yeah.
Just everywhere. And that's like sort of just like a, you know, a fun-loving stereotype about Canadians too, is like they like the beer, but all of these like stereotypes that are supposedly harmless, but then, you know, it can really put shade over things that maybe do need to be addressed and do need to be worked out. Okay. Do you think that there is a fear with parents that if they're using cannabis, their children are more likely to misuse cannabis or start earlier, or like, what do you think the common fears are around that? What are the conversations that you have with other like people who advocate responsible cannabis usage? What do you think?
Well, something that an idea I've been playing around with recently that I think might have some credence is that a good way to help your kids not be interested in cannabis is to tell them how much you love it.
Well, right? That's actually the thing I was asking. I was thinking of when I was asking the question, right? Because it's like,
it's not as cool. It's not as taboo. And like, I think that some of that appeal and sheen will be lost for them, to be honest.
Right?
But, you know, so there's that perspective. But, you know, then on the other hand, like, right?
Like modeling because you want them to emulate it, or modeling because you know they're going to run far away from it. Like, right? My youngest is almost 15. I get it. I get teenagers. Yes.
Yeah. So there is that, but of course I don't want them to go to something more dangerous, because cannabis can't kill you even in the largest amounts. You know, obviously people can do unsafe things with cannabis, but physiologically it's not going to depress the, you know, breathing or anything like that, their heart, you know, nothing. So, you know, to the point of, you know, of fatal overdose. And so like, I hope they don't ever go to anything more dangerous, because cannabis isn't cool because it's mom's thing. But but honestly, you know, to me, like I'm not worried, because I put so much premium, so much value, as I was saying, on creating that relationship with my kids where we are open and honest with each other. Stuff comes up at school with friends and they do tell me about it. And I'm trying not to be too naive, because my oldest is 12 and I know that, you know, teen years are a different thing altogether. But I think that, you know, establishing that baseline now will help them when they really need it, when they really are faced with something that they need to come to me about. You know, I want to know what's happening in their lives, and I want to know if their friends are consuming, and I want to know where they're getting that weed if they're consuming it. So, you know, it's just going to be a series of conversations. I believe in the harm reduction approach, which is a way of dealing with the, you know, sex and drugs conversation with teens. And that's, you know, good education, proper, knowledge about, dosage and consumption, all that stuff. And, with the general, counsel of please delay, your use, please don't engage in any risky, if you are going to consume, please don't engage in any risky behavior when you do, call me if you need me, that sort of thing. So I'm not, overly concerned about teenage use of cannabis because of all of these, relationship factors and harm reduction factors that we have there. But, it's something to stay in conversation with, your teen about, for sure.
So I haven't read any studies about this recently. I've just heard other people just cite this, and I was eavesdropping because I'm pretty good at that. Okay, and I really need to find this. But when they said it, I was like, that feels true. So, okay, what they were saying is that teenagers are having less sex than ever, than like since they started studying how much sex teenagers are having.
Really?
Yes. So much of their communication is online, and they hang out in groups. And this is what I see. This is what I see from, the couple generations of adolescents who I coached, and even seeing in my own kids who are just 15, 13, and 9. But I think of like myself when I was 15, and the seriousness of the relationship I had at that time, and all of those things, like, it's like I was on a different level, like in a different place than my kids are now, like really so much. So I wonder too, if I just feel like kids are home more, or it's supervised more, right? Than before. So I don't know, touch wood. I don't know if I'm being naive, but I feel like I could have gotten into so much more trouble if I had a cell phone at that age, but my kids are really so much more supervised now than teenagers were back, mid 90s, which I think was like the very best time ever to be a teenager.
To be a teen.
Maybe I should try to do some like astral travel, Danielle, to go back and be a teenager who smoked weed. I probably would have had more fun. Okay, tell me about this. Tell me about inhalation. Tell me about like health. Talk about lungs, because whenever I think of inhaling anything in my mouth, I see like the charred lungs that we saw in health class. Right?
Yes.
That's what I see.
Yes, I know. There's such a fear and stigma about smoking cannabis because of how toxic tobacco and, the whole tobacco industry has been too. Smoking cannabis has not been associated in studies with lung cancer specifically. When people smoke both tobacco and cannabis, then lung cancer tends, to be more prevalent. But when it's just cannabis, no. However, it's not ideal for your lungs to regularly inhale hot, somewhat particulate matter. Obviously, it can be irritating. It can cause, some inflammation, some, phlegm, things like that smokers cough. I say that moderate usage of even just smoking is pretty low risk. But if you're going to be consuming a lot, multiple times a day, then probably smoking is not what you want to do each time.
Right. And let's just look at volume too, right? For like typical smokers, like I feel like smoking's in the past, even though like that's not, but anyway, half a pack a day or something, like it's a lot of cigarettes.
That's a lot of cigarettes. That's a lot of inhaling. Whereas with cannabis, yes, it's the volume is much lower. So, 2 to 3 puffs could be plenty, and that, would last somebody for hours.
For hours. Right. Okay. So like the volume is different. Okay.
Quite different. But, there are other ways to inhale that are less, harmful on the lungs that don't involve smoke. So vaporizing is the one that I actually recommend. It's not vaping. So vaporizing is where people have the actual flower, the cannabis material, the bud, and they put it in a device called a vaporizer. It's got a little like heating chamber. It heats it up, but it doesn't combust. It doesn't light it on fire. It heats it enough to release, doesn't burn it. So enough to release a vapor that, that you inhale and that has all the cannabinoids and terpenes in it. And the flavor is actually really nice. It's more sort of like, terpene rich and, planty feeling, whereas smoking has obviously that thick smoke feel.
Okay. Question. I think I have friends who get like, are they like oil cartridges or something?
So that is the third category. Okay, and that's vaping. That's vaping. So vaporizing is where you use the cannabis plant, use the flower, and you turn it into, use this heating chamber that turns it into a vapor. And then vaping is with these liquids, these vape cartridges. Okay. And, I mean, those are nice because they're discreet. They're easy to use. You basically just, they're often disposable pens, not great for the environment, but they're often disposable pens, or you get the cartridge and the battery separately, just screw it on, put it up to your lips and inhale as much as you want and then exhale. Super easy, not, no smoke smell. It's quite discreet, but we don't know the long-term effects of vaping on the lungs. And there was that, I don't know if anybody remembers pre-COVID, there was this vaping crisis where some people were dying from vaping. And it was just, we surmised that it was because of additives that were in these vape cartridges, not the THC, not the tobacco, because people vape tobacco too, but it was this vitamin E acetate that was in there that was causing major lung problems for people. So to me, it's like, it's a little bit of a gray area whether I recommend vaping. I think that, can be good for that discrete, factor, but not necessarily long-term lung health.
Yeah. Okay. Question. When you're getting the actual cannabis flower, do you weigh it? Do you pinch it? How do you know, Danielle? This is like, I've never had a baggie, clearly.
Well, they don't come in baggies anymore.
Okay.
Fortunately. And in states with adult use markets, they come in like beautiful glass, containers
They're
with
beautiful,
branding,
right?
and just like it looks like so appealing. And in other places they come in medicine bottles, right? If you're in a medical only state, it'll come in a medicine bottle, and everything in between. So, if I'm going to smoke, I have my smoking device, which is my bong. And I didn't start out with a bong, believe me, I started out with vaping because it felt so easy, easy entry, low level of experience needed. But I've graduated to a bong because because the water part actually cools down the smoke and it makes it so much smoother for me. So I really appreciate that. And smoking is my preferred mode of consumption, but I do use edibles. I use low dose edibles. I use topicals. I like to use cannabis in all kinds of different ways, but it's just like a pinch, just a little pinch, enough to get enough smoke for an inhalation or 2 or 3. I don't weigh it or anything like that. I don't roll joints. I'm not a joint smoker. So, in that case, people grind it and then they, lay it out and do their little rolls.
And all of our friends smoke weed, Danielle, all of our friends, all of his best friends, all of my sewing friends, right? Like we're always the ones who just don't partake.
That's hilarious.
Until I was like, I think I need a little help here with that their anxiety, because I always just thought it was stress. I thought just busy people feel like this. Mm. And it's like a sign of caring and doing and being. And I was like, I don't really care if it's a sign of that anymore. Like it doesn't feel good in my body. Mm-hmm. And I got to a point where I couldn't keep myself busy enough to not feel it. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. And I was like, all right, need some support, and can't exactly remember how, but one of my friends in Canada had CBD oil that she was sourcing up there. And I was like, send it down. And then I've had CBD from local farms around here and things like that. But truly, truly, truly having that tiny bit of THC in there really feels good. Really feels
it does.
Good.
And I mean, that's a great point that you brought up. People, I think, generally think that if you consume cannabis, you're just going to get high. There's one way to feel, but there's a large spectrum from not high at all, just a little bit relaxed, to high AF, right? And then everything in between. And my sweet spot is more on that, moderate microdosed place where the alteration to my senses is mild, but I feel more like myself. I feel more in tune, more in the moment, more at peace in my body, more able to listen to my kids, as they talk for 45 minutes about Minecraft or whatever,
Right. That's how I use it. And that's how I like it. It just like I said, brings my brain down, just a one notch. Yeah. Otherwise, I want to start 7 new businesses before breakfast every day.
Who, you?
On no planet is that a good idea. It's just not, but I'm really fiery. So every new idea is the best idea I've ever had. And I'm super excited about that. It's like I'm running too high in some places. So just to go like, hey, maybe 4 new businesses today, maybe. All right.
4 new businesses before breakfast. Let's be realistic.
Yeah. Just like, let's bring it down just a little bit. So yeah, that's how it helps me. And because I love working, I'm an Enneagram 3, shutting off from work mode. And like, some people, I think I've heard this, Danielle, they just like relaxing. Like it's a fun thing for them.
Yeah.
Are you one of these people, or have you heard this? Or
especially with cannabis.
Yeah. So when people are like, oh, take a break, relax. I'm like, are you trying to accelerate my anxiety? Like that's not relaxing, doesn't do it for me. So having a support that just like goes, oh yeah, maybe we could watch a movie. This is going to sound like an exaggeration, but that's life-changing for me. It is.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I observe from the outside how dynamic you are and how you really go for things, and you work hard, Ashley. I see that you work hard, and you're having fun at it too, though. That's the great thing. Like it's obvious that you enjoy it.
I love it. And I really enjoy the ability to like turn it off or just relax, like to chill, right? To just chill a little bit.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah. And we deserve it. And it's necessary. That sacred pause. It really is.
And that's what I like. It makes me feel more connected to Manny, to the kids, just to be able to just know I can reach for something that will just bring me down a notch, right? And like you said, I have meditate every day, journaling, this, that. I have my tarot cards. I have all of the things, right, that we do. But like I said, being a human on earth right now, it's like all hands on deck.
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
So people should definitely get Danielle's book. Where else can people find you, Danielle?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at Danielle Simone Brand. My website is daniellesimonbrand.com. It needs an update, just FYI, but people can get in touch with me in either of those spots. I'm on Facebook here and there, but yeah, Instagram and my website are the best spots.
Anytime I post a picture of my bookshelf and your book is there, I get so many questions about this, Danielle. I know people are so curious. That's what I said. The Canna Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the Fuck Out. Yes. And we have a section on sex too, right?
Absolutely. Got a chapter on sex where I tell a little bit of my own story too. And, for your readers, there's plenty of personal narrative in there, a little bit scandalous at times, but, I wanted to be real.
They are here for the scandal, my people. They like it quite a bit.
All right.
They like it quite a bit. Because we all got a little scandal. We all have a little scandal in the closets, honestly. Don't we all?
I think so.
Thank you so much for being here, Danielle.
Thank you, Ashley.
This episode is coming to an end, and I don't want it to finish before you take action. Take a screenshot of this episode and text it to your spouse. Let them know you're thinking of them and how you can better your relationship. If you both need a little hand-holding, grab Keeping It Hot, the workbook, for fun, low-pressure conversation starters to get to know each other on a whole new level. Or if you want to rip the Band-Aid off, if you want your dynamic with your partner to take a leap forward while you also dig deeper and fast, read Swing. The audiobook is on Audible, and I narrate it. You can also request the paperback or the ebook from your local library. Whatever action you decide to take, be proud. It takes courage to move the plot of your story forward, even just a little bit. And small steps every day really do add up. Keeping It Hot with Ashley Renard is a production of Manitoba Woman Media. Produced by Elizabeth Krause. Original music by Echo Drop. Production assistance by Lauren Petraglia.